answer your questions. So please, please, please be able to like and subscribe. And Miss Mary just went live on YouTube, so I have to start all of it over. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Mike Lead Aspirer session on, okay, well, let's try that again because I was hearing myself. See, we're having technical difficulties right now. So all I have to say is welcome, Liz. And we're gonna, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm gonna go off camera. Like I said, I'll be monitoring the chat. I'll be monitoring our YouTube as well. So if anyone has any questions, but you go ahead and do your thing.
Sounds good. Hey, everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen. Oh, I'm giving you a little preview. And wait from the start. So as Mary said, my name is Liz. I've been in the cybersecurity industry for about 4 years, but honestly feels like a lot longer. And today I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to be a pen tester. So just a quick agenda to let you know like how this talk is going to go. I'm going to talk about my career journey and then like what is hacking, and then like the day in the life of a pen tester. Some resources that you can reference if you're interested in pursuing a career as a pen tester, some lessons I've learned along the way, and some lessons I'm continuing to learn, and I'll take questions after that. I really love this graphic because it really describes basically what I thought my life was going to look like and what it currently looks like. So I was always very interested in academics and really, I just really want to understand how to do well in life. In 4th grade, I got into the gifted program, and I thought my life was set. Like, I've been identified as somebody who does well in school, and my parents always told me, if you just go to school, get good grades, you'll get a good job. But that's definitely not what happened to me, at least towards the end of when I was in school. So once I got into the gifted program, I looked into like what are the top high schools in Toronto. I stumbled upon Cardinal Carter Academy, which is an art school. So I said, Mom, I want to learn how to play an instrument. She put me into flute lessons. And so for 4 years, I learned how to play the flute. I auditioned for the school, I got in, I was doing well, getting like 90 average, whatever. But then I got burnt out. It turns out I didn't really enjoy playing music like for money. My first job actually was a gig when I was 16 at a church, and they paid me $200 to play something like 2 minutes in a whole like ceremony. I was like, wow, like I'm gonna be rich, but no. Like gig work is very hard. And I mean, you have gig work in cybersecurity too, but I was facing reality that, it wasn't something that, would be lucrative for me. I happened to be doing well, like in my science courses and math courses. So I entered into a program for biochemistry. And that was another journey itself. I was doing well at the beginning, but then I started failing classes. Things were getting hard. And then again, I was getting burnt out. I fought my way into grad school. I got into a grad school program for biochem, but I quickly realized that, it's not what I wanted to do for another 2, 4, 6 years of my life, getting a master's degree and a PhD. So I dropped out, and, parents weren't too happy because what did they say? They said, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. That was not happening to me anymore. So I went to the drawing board and said, what did I enjoy as a kid? And aside from music, I was playing around with coding. I was making basic websites as a kid. Back then it was like AngelFire, GeoCities. This was pre-Facebook. I just liked, making pictures and whatnot and music appear on my website. So I started going to boot camps. I learned about like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, which has changed a lot at that point since, the mid 90s. Eventually, one of the facilitators of the workshops that I went to for C# happened to own a company in Calgary. It's another province. And he was looking for someone to do sales and marketing. So I up and left and moved to Calgary. No friends there or anything, but I really liked the virtual reality industry. I started doing that. And with marketing and sales, you end up collecting a lot of data about people. And sometimes the people I reached out to kind of freaked out because they said, "How did you get my information? I don't know who you are. I never gave you this information in the first place." And that's the first time I realized, like, maybe there's an industry where you can, protect people's information and data, and learned about cybersecurity. So I went back to school. I did a postgrad in cybersecurity, and yeah, I was just enamored. It was crazy. Like, of course, I'm sure most people, when they think about cybersecurity, they think about hackers. I did not think I would be a hacker. I thought that was just like something out of this world. What happened was, after I finished that program, I started going to conferences, and I was just telling people, "Hey, like, I want to be a hacker." And I was learning like from different resources online, which I'll share later. And really, a lot of it was luck. I happened to talk to somebody who said, "I happen to have a project that you can work on as a beginner." And from there, I started getting a few more contracts here and there. Eventually, one of those people that I worked for knew somebody at Deloitte, a Big Four consulting firm. He got me an interview there, and I got my first job in cybersecurity. Yeah, and I really did not expect it, because I was applying to so many jobs, like on LinkedIn, on Craigslist, Indeed, was not getting any callbacks. And I didn't really have anything to differentiate myself. And I'm sure a lot of you who are just starting, it's like, yeah, I'm going to school and I'm learning all these things, maybe looking to get a certification, but in a sea of so many people looking for jobs, how do you stand out? And really, it is just networking, going to events like this, like attending webinars, getting involved in organizations like Minorities in Cybersecurity. So yeah, that's how I got my first job. I first started doing like risk assessments, just trying to see the security posture of different clients, different companies that Deloitte was contracted to. Eventually, I wanted to do pen testing, and I started networking within the organization. Within 6 months, I became a full-time pen tester. And so I did that for about a year. I went to another smaller consulting firm to expand the type of pen tests that I was doing, because before I was doing mostly web apps for banks. And then at the smaller consulting firm, I had the opportunity to do more like mobile pen testing, wireless pen testing, code review, and in different industries as well. I did get a little bit burnt out again. There's a theme here, getting burnt out, just because I wanted to like progress in the company, but there was a lot of layers of bureaucracy that went to it. So I started looking again, and I was expecting to still be a pen tester, but I ended up getting my current position as a security engineer. It's just a lot more broad. I don't do as much pen testing anymore for them, but I do freelance contracts on the side as a pen tester. So I'm able to do that while working as a security engineer, making just anything to do with security at the company, I will consult. So I do security awareness training, like architectural reviews with the engineering team, kind of, I guess, negotiating for more budget if we need security tools and things like that. So that's where my career is at right now. And, there's always something to learn in cybersecurity. So I'm also pursuing more certifications and things like that. But I can't believe 4 years has gone by. In a nutshell, that's what my career looks like. It wasn't really straightforward like it was in the beginning, like in high school, but it was just, I never even thought about going to cybersecurity. From biochem to cybersecurity, who knew? So on to like the topic for today, what is ethical hacking? And, a common question I get is, how do you differentiate between an ethical hacker and, malicious hacker, the kinds of people that, end up on the news? And we do use pretty much the same tools and same methodologies, just the difference is consent. So an ethical hacker usually works with a company with, like, there's a contract involved. You do what's called a scope. So you both agree on, like, what is out of bounds, like what can you, like, tinker and look at. Whereas with a malicious hacker, you don't have a contract. It's just they do whatever it takes to see if they can find any information on you. So with an ethical hacker, yes, they might exploit vulnerabilities that they find, but they will then tell the company, hey, this is how I got in and this is how you fix it. Often also, like, as I was mentioning earlier, ethical hackers tend to pursue certifications to improve their craft. Not to say that malicious hackers don't. I'm sure some of them use the same resources that ethical hackers use to learn. And also, yeah, as I mentioned before, motivation. The motivation of an ethical hacker is to, like, protect people, to protect companies from having their data exposed or having their customers' data stolen. Whereas for a hacker, it's really, sometimes they just do it because they can, or they have some sort of political agenda, or just want to create havoc or steal money, like, for example, from a bank. So the methodology that I'm about to show you is just a guideline. Oh, before that, the most common style of hacking for an ethical hacker is Graybox. So that is when the company gives you credentials beforehand. So let's say they give you access to a web portal. They give you your own username and password so that you mimic what it's like when a hacker is already in your system. Whereas a black box pen test is more of what a malicious hacker would face. There's only maybe 2 instances where I've ever done a real black box test, where they give you, let's say, the website or an IP address, and they say, go, see what you can find. So with a Graybox hack, there is a little bit more setup involved. With a Whitebox pen test, it's not as common, depending on the company you work at, but basically there's a lot more setup that needs to be done compared to Graybox. With a Whitebox pen test, like, often you get access to, like, source code of an application. You get, like, the whole list of IP addresses and what is there. The benefit of that is that you don't really waste time poking around. In a black box pen test, you have no idea what's going on, so you have to spend more time with reconnaissance, like finding out what the environment looks like. With a white box pen test, you know everything, so you can kind of plan your test accordingly, and so you know exactly, like, how you can get in. Yeah, so again, most ethical hackers will have a gray box approach when they work with clients. So this is a framework that hackers use in general when they approach a pen test. So I touched on this a little bit already. You plan for the pen test and prepare for it. So you meet with the client, they tell you what's inbounds, out of bounds, and then also kind of like what time you're able to do the pen test. So there are companies where they don't want you testing their systems during regular work hours because you could accidentally bring something down and then affect, like, their productivity. So there have been times where I've worked like midnight to 8 a.m. or 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. That's part of the game, especially when you're just beginning. So let's say once all of that preparation, everything's good, you have permission, everything, all of that is set, you start doing reconnaissance. Reconnaissance, it's like from an army term where you're kind of looking at the lay of the land. What am I working with? Often for me, what that looks like is going on LinkedIn, scraping the names of people who work at the company, seeing if there are people who I could target specifically for phishing. Phishing is sometimes inbound, sometimes out of bounds. It depends on the client and the budget. Another thing is like looking on the website, seeing what kinds of, let's say, activities they're involved in. Depending how far you want to take your pen test, sometimes like you can show up at the actual physical office, see what kind of information you can find from there. But we're going to keep it to the web, just for simplicity's sake. So let's say you're done your reconnaissance, you start scanning the net and enumerating. So you're scanning using something called Nmap, usually for a network pen test. You're scanning for what kind of ports are open, what kind of services that the company is using on the different IPs that are available to you. And then, so for simplicity's sake, let's say you find SMB. You go to a vulnerability assessment, which is trying to see if something is vulnerable. So let's say with SMB, you see that they're using version 1. Version 1 means that it does not support encryption. So then you go to the exploitation phase. Now that you know that the system is vulnerable, you exploit that. So I know I'm throwing different terms at you, you can ask later. So in the exploitation phase, then this is essentially the hack. So with SMB, I know that I can go into another tool called Metasploit. It's almost like a Google for hacking. So you search SMB, you're able to find the tool that can exploit that vulnerability for that version, and then you exploit it. So you run it, and then you're in because you successfully exploited the vulnerability. Post-exploitation is what do you do once you're in? So you try to find information, sensitive information, maybe it's personal data about the company, maybe it's credentials, and then you go from there. So let's say the test is done. You start reporting. How did you get in? What time? How do you fix it? You start creating a report, and that's very important, is being able to write for a person who is not familiar with computers, so that if they try to recreate it, they are able to reproduce it on their own. The last step is communicating with the client, like what happened, presenting the report, and giving them the tools to be able to fix what you found. Sometimes that involves a retest later on to see if they've been able to fix it correctly. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's it in a nutshell, from like the planning phase all the way to delivering the report to the client.
We had a question. Wait a minute.
Yes.
There's a question in the chat. How long would it take to do a pen test going from step 1 to step 8?
Oh, that's a great question. So it depends on the client, what their budget is. For a ballpark, I would say like a web app pen test can take anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. It depends how like big the environment is. It depends how much detail they want you to go into. But I would say an average pen test that I've been on has been between 3 to 5 days. Yeah. And then I have some resources here. These are all that I've personally used. So Try Hack Me is a great place to where you get like step-by-step, like with screenshots and everything of how to go about learning how to start hacking. Cybrary has a lot more resources about cybersecurity in general. So not just hacking, but also like risk assessments, secure software development, IAM, which is identity access management, and things like that. Can I post the resources? Yes, I definitely will. I think, Mary, you can send these afterwards. Yeah, and then
actually, I do not have the capability. I don't know who's all on the call, and so there's no central way that I'm going to be able to hit everybody on the call. If, you see it on the YouTube channel and you can rewatch the video and pause and pull them down, I think that'll be the best bet.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, you can also take a screenshot. I put the links here on purpose so that it didn't have to be dependent on being able to click. Yeah, LinkedIn Learning I used for studying for certifications. TCM, the Cyber Mentor, he's a YouTuber that started his own certification company as well, and he has amazing resources, a lot cheaper than the traditional certifications that you see in the industry. Yeah, I won't go through everything line by line. I'd rather get to questions, but some things that I want to highlight were things that you can do outside of school or work is listening to podcasts. So with cybersecurity headlines, every weekday, they have a 5-minute podcast that they put out that talks about what happened in cybersecurity that day. That's how I personally keep up even to this day. Darknet Diaries is a bit more long form, where they go through a hack in detail and even interview the people that were involved. It's really, really good storytelling, and I highly recommend it. I binged it when I was first starting out. And then Afternoon Cyber Tea, that's from Microsoft. They also do a good job of talking about more what is working in cybersecurity, how to move up, and things like that. I see another question. Do you need a technical background to enter the field as a pen tester, or are training in certs enough? Well, so it definitely helps to be technical or have a technical background. But like I said at the beginning, I studied biochemistry. I did not have a technical background at all. And also there's more to cybersecurity than hacking. There are more non-technical places where you can start in cybersecurity, like governance, identity access management, but it will never hurt to learn more tech. But entering as a pen tester, some people have different opinions. I like the structure of certifications just because you kind of have a roadmap of what to learn. That said, I do not have the OSCP is the gold standard for pen testers, but even to this day, I don't have one, and I've already had 3 jobs, full-time jobs as a pen tester. You don't necessarily need them because ultimately when you are interviewing, they want to know if you know how to do it. So they ask you things about how would you approach a pen test? What do you know about a common exploit? They're not necessarily looking for certifications, especially when you're a beginner. If they see that you are interested and willing to learn and active in the community, you have a chance of getting a job without certification. Another thing I wanted to mention was going to conferences. This was huge. I mentioned at the beginning, I got my first job from being at a conference. I just said, I want to be a pen tester. I happened to meet somebody who had a contract, a little job, and I was able to jump on the opportunity because I was there. That would not have happened if I was just, studying all day on my computer and not really interacting. What I love about the industry is that there's always somebody willing to help, no matter if they're a junior person or an executive. A lot of people are super helpful just because, cybersecurity is a team sport. There's always new things to learn. There are jobs that are unfilled right now. There's a lot of demand for cybersecurity. So I would really encourage you to go to conferences and then also be involved in organizations like Minorities in Cybersecurity. There are, so IC Squared and ISACA, there are certification bodies that also happen to have local chapters that have usually monthly events. There are way more organizations than these, in your local area. I'm sure there are more. In Toronto, I can think of 5 offhand that have events every month. So when I was first getting into cybersecurity, I was going to 2 events a week, and it was getting overwhelming. But you end up seeing the same people over and over again, start to get to know them. They introduce you to people. So leading to my next point is that like some lessons learned over the years was that it's all about community. It's all about who you know. It's really disheartening. Like, believe me, it took me 6 months to 8 months, something like that, like pushing a year before I got my first job. And I couldn't have done it, like been able to get a job in cybersecurity if it weren't for like the people who were willing to help me. And also in cybersecurity, just keep learning. At the beginning, when I like first got my job, I'm like, man, like I did it. But like, even if there are talks like in your community that are just aimed for beginners, sometimes you end up learning something. Like maybe, let's see, I went to a talk 2 weeks ago about pen testing, and even though I am a pen tester, there were little like tricks that I learned from them, just because, you know, everybody has their own way of doing things. There's endless tools out there, and it's impossible to know everything from just looking online. And on that note, though, even though there is a lot out there, pace yourself. And this is the lesson that I have to continually learn myself, is that yes, there's always something to learn, but also there's more to life than cybersecurity and like progressing in your career. If you're burnt out, that doesn't help anybody. So just pace yourself. Like, you know, as long as maybe take 30 minutes of your day learning a new skill. That way, at least, you know that you're continually progressing towards your goals, rather than, you know, doing something all consuming and then like you don't want to do it anymore. Are there any more questions in the chat? What common tools are used for pen testing in the industry? Oops. So here, so what I would recommend is like Kali Linux. If you download that operating system, that's what most pen testers use, because it comes with like a lot of tools already out of the box. Some people use Parrot OS. I personally don't have much experience with that operating system, but people use that too, and you're welcome to try it out yourself. I would recommend learning how to use Linux, just because, yeah, Kali is a Linux distribution. There's a bit of a learning curve, learning how to use the different commands in the command line. Although, you know, there are pen testers that specialize in Windows. I'm not one of those people, but I think you'll get further, especially as a beginner, learning how to use Kali Linux. And, you know, personally, there was one time where I had to do something in Windows, but I'm not familiar with like PowerShell and things like that. So I actually used ChatGPT, and it was able to kind of essentially translate the command from Linux to Windows. With all the tools out there, like as long as you're like, you know, researching, looking at different resources, you'll be able to get far. How long have I been talking? Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, not long enough. This is an hour or so.
Okay.
No. Just to let you guys know, we will be putting the resource links within in the notes section of the YouTube. So the video will have the links. So don't worry too badly about it. We'll get that accomplished for you.
I did have one more thing that I forgot to touch on, which is like pen testing is really broad as well. As broad as cybersecurity is, so is pen testing. Like, for example, like web app pen testing has its own set of tools. I have here listed Portswigger. That's a great way to learn how to exploit web apps specifically. And there's something called OWASP Top 10. Those are the most common ways that websites essentially are found to be insecure. With wireless pen testing, I actually have some props with me. This is an antenna that you can use to like sniff packets, and yeah, like find usernames and passwords to Wi-Fi. And then I have another thing here, which is new to me. It's a new toy. It's a Flipper Zero. You might have seen it on YouTube. people have been using it to like open Teslas and stuff. Yeah, you can really like dive deep into things in cyber in ethical hacking. Like there's also social engineering, which is like probably you're most familiar with is phishing, or like the people who like call you saying that you owe like taxes to the government. So that's phishing. And sometimes people go into buildings and like do live hacking, like they call it physical penetration testing. Are there any more questions in the chat, Mary?
No, I didn't see any more in the chat. I see Tony Briscoe is out there on the YouTube. So he said he has the sheet with all the links too. So we're gonna pick up.
Awesome.
We're gonna pick you up.
Yeah,
we'll get it done.
I was hoping to get more questions because I know like that's the most difficult thing. I feel like at least in my experience, people have a lot more questions rather than like they just want to sit and listen to somebody.
Well, I mean, you did go through that pretty fast, and I appreciate it. And so, go back to the previous slide where you talked about the different types of hackers. So you said you have, of course, back in that one right there. Back in my day, it was white hat, black hat. So understanding white hats are ethical, black hats are malicious. What about gray hats? There's one in between. So explain to the audience the difference between what's a gray hat hacker?
Well, a gray hat hacker, I don't know if anybody has seen Mr. Robot. So I would consider him a gray hat hacker where, you work in the cybersecurity industry during the day. You have this facade of being an ethical hacker, but then outside of work hours, maybe you are doing something malicious, or you're helping somebody else kind of penetrate into your company system. So it's kind of, that's a gray hat hacker where you're kind of walking both lines. I see a question.
You're like Clark Kent and Superman. Is that what we mean?
Yes. Exactly.
There's another question in the chat. What is a
Yes.
good way to be prepared as a newbie to the cyber conferences like Defcon?
Ooh, Defcon, man. I mean, Defcon is its own beast because the first time I went, I didn't do any research. I just showed up because I knew that was the conference that people went to. But knowing what I know now, I would like scour the forums. There's Defcon forums where you can learn about the different villages that are there. So let's say you're interested in pen testing. There is the Red Hat or the Red Team village, and I think there's another village as well. It's drawing a blank, but there are a couple of villages that are focused on pen testing. But it's always good to come in with an open mind because you never know what you're interested in. You never know what you're going to like encounter. For example, like I ended up going to the soldering village a lot, and I had no previous experience with like electronics, little electronics and stuff. But yeah, going to the forums, going on Reddit, and looking at what people are talking about there. There's also tons of people who have made YouTube videos about Defcon. Just Vegas in general bring a lot of money left and right. Like they want you to spend money, but also it's nice to have cash because people often sell different like, what do you call it, tools. Like for example, the Flipper Zero, like people were selling them there. And sometimes it's hard to get online. So it's nice to have cash on hand in case something really piques your interest and you want to get your hands on it.
I have a story here. So do they still play Spot the Fed?
Yeah, they do.
The first time I went to Defcon, I was a special agent with the FBI. And that was the ongoing game, the whole Spot the Fed thing. And of course, nobody ever spotted me as being a Fed. but they spotted some of my colleagues. That was interesting. It's been years. I mean, I'm dating myself. This is like 2000 what 2003, around that time when I was going out there. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, like actually government presence is a little bit more welcome these days at Defcon. Like back then they were a bit more hostile, but these days like they even have a policy village now where like they invite government officials to talk about how they're like beefing up security and what they're working on.
Yeah, they invited them then too. But how can you be hostile with a person that has a gun? I don't, I mean, really, if you want that smoke, we can bring that smoke. But there's another question. It says, would bug bounty folks be considered gray hat?
I would say bug bounty folks would be, that's a good question. Yes and no. Like there are bug bounty platforms where there is like rules of engagement before getting on the platform and working on like a certain client. But I guess maybe what you're talking about is people who just poke around, find something, and then tell the company. In that case, yes, just because they don't have permission from the company beforehand. So in that case, yeah, technically they're not supposed to do it, but the ethics are there. Like they're telling the company, hey, I found something. Let's work together to fix it. Where it goes south is where maybe the company isn't getting back to them as quickly as they want. And then they say, hey, I'm going to like post this on Twitter. I'm going to like expose all the vulnerabilities that I found. That would get into black hat territory. So yes and no, that's the answer. And then another question is, should we have a burner phone and leave all tech at home? No, because we live in a society and we need to communicate. There are ways to use tech securely and smartly. There's no need to just like move into the woods and like leave all your tech.
I think they were talking about when you go out to Defcon, when you go out to Vegas.
Oh, I see. No. Yeah, things have changed as well with Defcon. Like in the last couple of years that I've gone, there's actually like a secure way to connect to Wi-Fi. Like you get a certificate on your phone and everything. So you don't have to worry about that so much. Yeah, things have changed.
I have another question in the Q&A. What is the most advanced thing you needed to hack into and what made it complex?
Me personally?
Yeah, he's not talking to me.
Fair enough. The most complex thing that I found.
You did mobile devices too, right?
Yes.
You did some mobile pen testing too.
That was actually the story that I was going to bring up. So it was right when I got my certification for mobile pen testing and I started getting booked for these types of pen tests. So I didn't really find anything out of the ordinary within the scope of the test. And I had 2 days left in the test. So I went back to the client and said, hey, like, can I maybe expand this? Like I had the permission of my company where it would be, there would be no extra cost. I just wanted to see if I could find anything else. I ended up finding the staging environment for the app. And turns out that their logs were in plain text, like there was no encryption involved. So there were credentials to their cloud environment within those logs. That was crazy. Yeah. And would I say that it needed advanced skills? Not really. It was more, I guess I knew what to look for. I knew that the application had to be like hosted somewhere, and looking through, I guess, in Portswigger, in Burp Suite, like the chain of like where the requests were coming from and going to, I was able to find that point where it was the staging environment. I wouldn't say it was something that like needed an advanced degree or anything. It was more just asking questions, being curious about like the different steps that it took for the requests to go through. I think I see more questions.
Yeah, I got you. Is pen testing a financially rewarding career?
Yes, like if in one word I had to answer it, yes, it is. Like I'm not filthy rich by any means, but it definitely, once I got into pen testing, it definitely changed like my relationship with money, I guess. The really, really good pen testers make a lot of money, definitely, but it's really hard to get to that level. But even as like an average pen tester, I would call myself that. Yeah, it's a great way to make money. And, you know, it feels good to be able to help people like in a tangible way. So that's my answer for that.
Yeah,
I see.
I have one that says, and I don't know, Liz, you may or may not, it says, are you privy to any organization that have remote positions for pen test interns? I live in Africa and it has not been easy getting an entry-level position.
I would
Now,
say,
yeah, go ahead.
so I can't speak like for Africa, but I do know that I would say the majority of pen testing positions these days are remote. I guess just the difficulty is like going through the interview process. That's the hardest thing, and that's the hardest thing for any job, really. So like I mentioned earlier, going to conferences or getting involved in organizations, that's the best way to find opportunities for remote positions as a pen tester.
Yeah, and I think we have another one. Do you need to have experience with coding languages or use coding often?
No, I would say no. I happened to get into coding before. Like this was around 2015, 2016, and when I was looking for a new job, and at that time boot camps were really, really in vogue and they were new. So I happened to do a few of those boot camps, but I would say you don't really need to learn how to code because there are tools that you use that kind of take coding, like they abstract the coding out of pen testing. That said, it does help to understand how to code. So one thing that I often come across is like a tool that I want to use is written in Python 2, but I need Python 3. So I had to go in and kind of change the syntax. Another thing that helps with code, like learning how to code, is being able to create loops. So if you do something over and over again, something as simple as like scanning a network, it's really useful to be able to learn how to script, creating a for loop, like for every IP that I have in this list, do this command. But you definitely don't need to like know how to create an app from scratch or anything like that. Of course, it helps. More knowledge is power, but the minimum I would say coding experience you need is just something like going on Code Academy and learning like how a for loop works, or just learning syntax of language. Those are things that you can also Google. It takes longer if you have to look it up, but it's doable.
So is it fair to say really and you know, as I talk to folks about the cybersecurity profession, it's still curiosity, it's still digging in, it's still research, right? Because you consider yourself to be an average pen tester, right? But so there's still stuff to learn and tips and tricks because things are changing all the time. So is it fair, as I, you know, to say, and I'm setting myself up for my own answer, but that the curiosity part and the being a forever student is really important in this profession, is in all of cybersecurity, but specifically with being a pen tester.
Yeah, of course, because also like, let me go back to the slide with the methodology. So let's say like, this is how I hack. In general, yes, but you know, sometimes you have to go back and to a different step. Maybe like, especially in the reconnaissance phase, maybe you miss something. Maybe you later on, you find something while you're exploiting. You have to go back and see what you discover. Or oftentimes I even work on applications or languages that I'm not familiar with. Like I had to work on a .NET application, no experience at all. I had to look it up. And also, like, if you kind of pigeonhole yourself, like going different screens, if you pigeonhole yourself and say, these are the tools I'm using and that's it, well, you're kind of limited in like your resources. And let's say your goal is to become a pen tester, but you can only find a job in a different domain. Like let's say you get a job in the SOC, or you get a job doing risk assessments. All of that knowledge helps in the long run as a pen tester as well, because then you know how to talk to the client, you know how to communicate the importance of fixing something, rather than just saying like, hey, I found this vulnerability, you need to fix it. Well, you can say why. Like it helps improve your business's reputation in the industry. It helps your customers trust you more. It makes everyone's jobs easier, like at the company. Instead of trying to put out fires, then you can kind of be proactive and not worry about these low-level kinds of vulnerabilities. And then with access management, you can explain like, how to configure things at the beginning so that they don't have to worry about security vulnerabilities so much. So everything in cybersecurity kind of is interconnected. So anything that you learn in a different domain, it will help in another. And it's kind of nice as well. Yeah, because your interests will change over time as well. Like maybe one day you hate pen testing. I don't know. I doubt it. Like it's really fun, but let's say you enjoy, like you learn how to code like in a more advanced way, then you get into secure coding. So everything is like really open. Just wherever your curiosity takes you, it'll take you far.
Yeah. Any more questions do we have? Are there plenty of opportunities in pen test, or is it a niche career?
I would say both. Like there are lots of opportunities for in pen testing. There are definitely lots of job openings that I see continuing to be posted. But is it an
actually our sponsor AWS is always looking for pen testers.
There you go. Yeah. But is it in Canada we say niche? Is it a niche career? It can be. So you can start specializing in, let's say, mobile pen testing, or like wireless pen testing, network pen testing. You can decide to become a specialist, and in that way, yes, it is pretty niche as well. Some people, it's easy for people to say that they are a pen tester these days. Like you can go far in, like, let's say you learn the beginning steps of like how to use Metasploit, because Metasploit has all these exploits kind of baked in. You can go pretty far that way, but as you move up and progress, if you want to move up and progress, you need to kind of learn how to exploit things manually without tools sometimes. And do you have social media? Oh, thank you, Mary. Yeah, that's my social media. You can connect with me on LinkedIn for sure.
I do. I can support sometimes. It's okay.
Yeah, keep the questions coming. To me, the value is like being able to, at least when I was starting out, I really like being able to ask somebody directly in the industry, like rather than watching videos, because there are endless questions that you can ask somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for you, what's next?
Oh man, Mary. So full disclosure, Mary is my mentor. She knows like the kind of things that I'm looking to do. So right now I'm pretty comfortable where I am. So I'm looking to do more stuff like with cloud. So I'm looking to, didn't mean for this, but I mean, AWS is a sponsor. I am looking to get an AWS certification. A lot of what I do now is developing policies for the company. So I'm also looking into like a privacy certification because like it's really important. Like my business, the company I work for really places high importance on keeping customer information private. But yeah, I would love to like get more into pen testing again, maybe like manage a pen testing group, something like that. But really, like, I don't know what I don't know. Maybe I'll get into like reverse engineering. And Mary introduced me to that like the other day, and I was like, that seems interesting.
Oh my goodness gracious. I will not bring our conversations to our live YouTube channel. Just say that Liz is a constant learner, always learning something new, always challenging herself, always doing things that get her out of her comfort zone. And that's what's important in this profession. Is like, as soon as you think you know something, something changes. Because I was curious, and just one quick question: have you ever had an opportunity to try to hack into a IoT device?
I have not, no.
Okay.
I don't have much
That's pretty cool.
experience with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So somebody who asked, like, is pen testing a niche career? It can be. Like IoT, I barely have an experience with that. There's plenty of ways to specialize as a pen tester as well.
Yeah. And so again, those layers, it gets layered upon layered in this profession, and all of the roles that we expose you to during these sessions. I hope you understand, holistically speaking, there is no one right way, right? You know, pen testing can be a beginner, and then it can get into a specialization, but everything else, working in the SOC, working in risk management, working in privacy, all of those things also matter. And so it's just finding what you love to do and going after it. But I don't see any more questions. Let me check real quick on YouTube. I don't. Way to go, Liz. I appreciate this session. That was a champion on the YouTube channel for you. If there aren't any more questions, we can give our Friday back. We're only 5 minutes away. You can connect with Liz on LinkedIn. She shared I shared her information. Definitely one of the superstars for those that are within MiC, that know that we like to train the trainer. She'll be around doing some other things that she doesn't know I'm volunteering her to do, but that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So you'll see her around. And I thank you so much again for coming and talking to us and sharing your career journey with us, Liz. We appreciate it. Thank you, everybody that's out there watching on YouTube, and the folks that are here live with us on Zoom. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We do have a goal to try to monetize our YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribing to our channel, please do. It's passive income, people. Revenue streams. We're trying to keep minorities in cybersecurity here for the long term. So it's an easy way for you guys to help us out. But all that to be said, thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate it. Liz will be back again. When is your next session? In November sometime, right?
Yeah, November 10th.
Yeah. November 10th, and we're talking about something more close or akin to leadership development. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening, and we'll talk again soon in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Have a great